When life is dull, when life is predictable, we turn to the unknown. We turn to something awful. Throughout the history of mankind, we often found ourselves searching for answers in the sky. But along that search, only stranger things have emerged. Point Pleasant, West Virginia, November 15th, 1966. A forgotten route leading to the World War II munition plant bunker near the McClintock State Wildlife Management Area sighted. The young couple driving through these forgotten ruins, perhaps finding a place for, well, some privacy, stumbled upon something more sinister. Through the darkness of the mysterious ruins was a pair of unwelcoming, glowing red orbs. As any other sane person would, the couple fled the scene, fearing for what was to come. The creature was in hot pursuit. Its large wings pierced through the sky with dead silence. This was the first of many sightings of the creature known as the Mothman. Just as fast as the creature's appearance and disappearance of that night, news spread all over the town. More and more sightings and evidence of the creature's existence emerged. Various accounts of people describing the same thing the first couple witnessed, and many reports mentioned those infamous hellish eyes. Shadow figures of a man with wings soared through the sky. Some witnesses even claimed that the creature is to blame for the collapse of the major bridge over the Ohio River, caused by radiation burns. So much word of mouth in a time where information was not easily citable or fact-checked led to many variants of the origins of this creature. Some say the Mothman is an ultradimensional being. Others believe it's an alien from a distant planet. And personally, more credible to believe, a radiation experiment or accident that turned into some sort of Lovecraftian entity. While some were afraid of any encounters with the being, others were eager to hunt down the monster. Armed search parties went to a TNT facility where the monster was first sighted, leading to many more reports that can give us a good idea of the appearance of this creature. Red glowing eyes, dark coat, an intimidating height of around 7 feet, wingspanning from 10 to 12 feet, an airborne speed of 100 miles per hour. Humanoid. What sets off most who encounter the Mothman has something to do vaguely with the concept of Uncanny Valley, a hypothesized relationship between an object's degree of resemblance to a human being and the emotional response to the object. This is what is defined as Uncanny Valley. While this is, like I mentioned earlier, a vague connection, I'd like to bring it up because it's an interesting topic to handle. Many things come into play when creating a theoretical basis for the Uncanny Valley hypotheses. I want to make a quick note that the study of Uncanny Valley is primarily based on the idea of why androids or humanoid robots bring unnerving feelings to people. But I feel as though there might be a correlation as well with humanoid organisms. At the very least, I believe it is worth exploring.
Hello, you are watching something awful. subscribe if no one gets hurt.
Base selection.
While in search for a mate, your brain is hard at work assessing each individual. Our primal instincts have a system for avoidance of selecting mates with low chance of fertility, poor hormonal health, and even an ineffective immune system. And of course, everything is based on a surface level visualization of the unit's face and body.
Pathogen avoidance.
Uncanny stimuli may activate a cognitive mechanism that originally evolved to motivate the avoidance of potential sources of pathogens by eliciting a disgust response. In other words, the more human a subject looks, the more potent their antipathy towards the subject's defects. This defect indicates that the subject's genetics closely resembles that to a human, and there's a probability of contracting diseases or parasites. Similarly, you can apply this to a fresh corpse that will inevitably lead to putrefaction.
Threat to humans' distinctiveness and identity.
Simply put, the more a subject resembles a real person, the more it represents itself as a challenge to our social identity as human beings.
Conflicting perceptual cues.
Perceptual tension occurs when an individual perceives conflicting cues to category membership, such as when a humanoid figure moves like an animal, or has visible animalistic features. In this instance, we can reverse the roles and see how terrifying it would be to see animals move like humans or even look like us. This perceptual mismatch hinders our evaluation of the subject. In layman's terms, it brings uncertainty of what something is or is capable of doing to us.
Violation of human norms.
If an entity looks sufficiently non-human, its human characteristics are noticeable, generating empathy. However, if an entity looks too human, it elicits normative expectations. This leads to a perceptual uncertainty and the disturbance of predictive coding. Feeling like this is getting too technical yet? No one said we were here for spooks only. In neuroscience, predictive coding, also known as predictive processing, is a theory of brain function in which the brain is constantly generating and updating a mental model of the environment. In other words, our brain solves a seemingly interactable problem. In this case, let's assume the Mothman is chasing you down the woods. Using a version of Bayesian inference, one can calculate a numerical estimate of degree of belief in hypotheses before evidence has been observed. But let's not dive too deep into that, because that's where my pretty little brain starts to smooth out a little bit. Let's draw a scenario out. Here we have our boy Elias. Elias is walking back home from his hot date with Charissa. Then out of nowhere, he sees the Mothman appear from the tall grass. Elias runs as fast as he can, hoping that the monster didn't see him. But alas, Elias has been locked onto. While our pretty little Mothman is trying to capture and devour our poor protagonist, Elias remembers those stories from all those creepypastas and the great information given by intellectual grand minds from certain YouTube channels. Here's my shameless plug to remind you guys to subscribe and also click that notification bell. Our protagonist remembers that the Mothman does not make any sound while it flies. He also remembers that the Mothman is potentially 6 to 7 feet tall. All of this is assuming that the stories are all true, of course. But let's just assume. You can easily predict that your chances of survival are radically increased if you take a left turn through the creepy forest rather than the bright, lonesome streets. Why, do you ask? Simple. The Mothman's red eyes will be a dead giveaway to its location, giving you a stealthy tactical advantage, which is of great importance when facing off an aerial creature. Chance of survival, now 15%. But if you find yourself in a near claustrophobic forest and listen to the sound of the trees whilst the beast dives headfirst for you, you might just be able to avoid most of its attacks. Chances of survival, now 26%. Well, that's if you're fast enough to outperform the speed of 100 miles per hour that this boy can zoom through. Assuming you survived the last scenario, you now find yourself near a crevice on the side of a rocky slope. There is just no way that this monster can crawl into these holes. There's your chance to hide while you can, and if it finds you, you wait out the beast till dawn. Chance of survival, now 65%. The general framework of predictive coding is all about minimizing the number of surprises. It is also the reason why we call this process confirmation bias. In this case, it is confirmation bias of survival for our boy Elias. Did we really need to make that long-winded bit? The answer is no. In fact, it was useless if my goal was to explain predictive coding, perhaps a bit inaccurate, or a lot. But that's what happens when you make a video on potential fictitious creatures made to generate revenue for tourists and fanatics. But what was not believable to one man was the existence of our dusty winged boy. American, born in West Liberty, Kentucky on Friday, December 1st, 1944, infamously known as a skeptical investigator of things supernatural and paranormal. He has several publications on various genres and was known to make the argument that the beast was just a barred owl. Entering the ring is Joe Nickel.
Scanning for life forms.
What was mass hysteria to the surrounding towns of Point Pleasant died off after the event of the Silver Bridge disaster. The Silver Bridge was an I-bar chain suspension bridge built in 1922 and named after the color of the aluminum paint. The bridge carried U.S. Route 35 over the Ohio River, connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Gallipolis, Ohio. On December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge collapsed under the weight of rush hour traffic, resulting in the death of 46 people. Or so they thought. It was only years later, after the Silver Bridge incident, where paranormal investigators and UFOologists made connections between the Mothman and the bridge collapse. This sparked a second wave of reports stating that the Mothman was sighted fleeing the scene during the collapse. I want to touch on something that I read. It's gonna get a little weird here, so I'm giving you a heads up. Hope you brought your own tinfoil though, cause man, I'm starting to run out. Our information comes from theportalist.com. And let's be honest here, we're talking about cryptids, so don't expect legitimacy in these sources. We're pretty much digging at the bottom of the barrel at this point. Let's begin, shall we? Since the first sighting of the Mothman, people have made their presumption of what it was and where it came from. What surprised me is how long the legacy of the Mothman went on for, and I guess the subject it was connected to. On April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear plant near the city of Pripyat in the north of the Ukraine SSR experienced the world's worst nuclear disaster. The explosion occurred during the routine system test on reactor number 4. Days prior to the explosion, residents of Pripyat and the workers of the power plant reported the sight of a winged figure flying over the town. Accompanied with the sightings, the reports also state an epidemic of nightmares and constant grim phone calls to those who witnessed what is known as the Black Bird of Chernobyl. Could this black bird be the Mothman? After the catastrophic event of September 11, 2001, reports of a large crane-like figure emerged 5 days before the attack. Since that date, it had been 31 years since the last reported sighting of the Mothman in the United States. Some reports even go as far as claiming that the Mothman was at the sighting during the collapse of the towers. Its red eyes piercing through the smoke and debris. Could this Mothman be responsible for the war on terror? On August 1st, 2007, the Interstate 35 bridge in Minneapolis, Minnesota collapsed, leading to 13 casualties and approximately 145 injured. Months before the event, sightings of the Mothman rose similar to the ones we mentioned here before. And just like the Chernobyl sightings, people dismissed the figure and claimed it to be a large heron or crane. On the contrary side of skeptics were the fanatics that concluded that the Mothman was no cryptid. The Mothman could be an entity beyond our understanding, beyond what is comprehensible to those living in the third dimension. This entity came here to warn us of impending doom. Or perhaps, this said hero had sinister intentions that plotted to bring damnation to the innocent. April 10th, 2009. In the town of La Junta in the state of Chihuahua, Mexico, there were reports of a strange hairy-winged creature. An anonymous report from a student states that the mysterious being was tailing him for about 15 minutes. It is said that during the time, the area encountered a local epidemic of swine flu. Swine flu is caused by the H1N1 virus strain, which started in pigs. Symptoms included fever, cough, sore throat, chills, and body aches. This small epidemic went on to spread all over the world. Final estimates were from April 12, 2009 to April 10, 2010, approximately 60.8 million cases, 274,304 hospitalizations, and 12,469 deaths occurred in the United States due to H1N1. The Mothman is something beyond this world. Why is it that it's targeting humankind with elaborate ploys to bring an end to our... You can't believe everything you hear on the news. Let's actually cover something that we do know, or at least sounds more believable. As far as all of this goes, we can credit a book titled The Mothman Prophecies, written by John Keel, and it's actually categorized in the non-fiction section, believe it or not. West Virginia, 1966. For 13 months, the town of Point Pleasant is gripped by a real-life nightmare that culminates the tragedy that makes headlines around the world. Strange occurrences and sightings, including a bizarre winged apparition that becomes known as the Mothman, troubles this ordinary American community. Mysterious lights are seen moving across the sky. Domestic animals are found slaughtered and mutilated. Journalist John Keel, arriving to investigate the freakish events, soon finds himself an integral part of an eerie and unfathomable mystery. Good reads. This book got 3.54 stars, which in all honesty isn't half bad considering all the things that the other maniac was saying on the news. In the book we get to read about similar phone calls just like in Pripyat near Chernobyl. Keel relates the Mothman to government conspiracies, describes it as a creature from a different dimension, and even brings up the Men in Black. Things are starting to feel like a weird multiverse episode in a cartoon show. And as much as I love getting into the detail with these weird finds, I won't be getting too deep into the Men in Black. Maybe in a later time though, I just might. Just know that a guy by the name of Gray Barker wrote a book titled They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, and this book popularized the Men in Black. Then in 1970, he wrote The Silver Bridge. This was the book that connected the Mothman with the collapse of the Silver Bridge, and presented the Mothman with his supernatural powers of giving people nightmares and calling its victims through supernatural hotlines. The biggest piece of media that came after the books is the movie The Mothman Prophecies, loosely based on the John Keel book sharing the same name, which probably sparked the current wave of Mothmania. The Mothman's legacy lives on and has become the central theme for Point Pleasant. The people of Point Pleasant hold an annual festival each year during the month of August. But unfortunately, that changed this year. Because of the ongoing struggle of COVID-19, the Mothman Festival has been cancelled for 2021. True or not, hero or menace, the Mothman is of great importance to Point Pleasant, bringing the town tourist revenue and a cultural movement that brings joy to the people who reside there. Some people go as far as to believe that the Mothman legend was just a hoax and was just created as a tourist attraction. And honestly, at this point, who fucking cares? Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't very confident when writing this on the Mothman. But man, that was quite the journey. A very tinfoil hat journey, but nonetheless, it's still a journey. I hope you enjoyed this topic. If you want to help support the channel and see more content like this, please like the video. Give us your thoughts, or even tell us if you ever had an experience with cryptids such as the Mothman. Doing this helps the channel out and the YouTube gods shine a light upon us here on the channel. Also, I would like to thank all of the new subscribers that have come to the channel since my last video. I'm so stoked to see all of you and the good reception we've been getting. Thank you so much for all your nice comments, suggestions, and support. In particular, I'd like to thank Ralex for his words and story. Also thank my friend Ed for being the 300th subscriber, and thank you for supporting the channel. I hope to see your lovely profile picture in the comments section. Much love, bruvs. Be kind, stay true, and when things are dull, give us another visit and experience something awful.
The tour is very poisonous and is considered more of a delirium than a psychedelic.
These entities of sinister nature just might break you, shake your spirit down right into the ground. These alkaloids ain't fucking playing around. No enlightenment, you just might go down 6 feet underground. Queen Tala Ashe when I laugh for your content. She sits on the throne, maybe